With that down, let's move on to our fourth main topic today. Chris, what is our fourth main topic?
We're hearing from Greg Tillman. Hi, guys. I'm with you that X-Men Dark Phoenix wasn't as bad as some made it out to be. I even found it a bit enjoyable. Sadly, though, I just read a report that film is about to complete its theatrical run. It's positioned to be a bigger flop than the recent Fantastic Four. Beyond X-Men, do you think the result of Dark Phoenix could be a concern for the comic book movie genre as a whole? Thanks. Now, I don't really think this is a big issue, John. I don't see it as a red flag. Do you see this as something that people should be worried about?
I'll tell you what. Yes. Yes, I do. And not for the X-Men franchise, because the X-Men franchise was wrapping up anyway. The X-Men franchise was coming off one of their weaker films in X-Men Apocalypse. And I agree. I did not think X-Men Dark Phoenix was nearly as bad as some people made it out to be. I also wouldn't call it a good film. But for me, it had its redeeming qualities. So I'm not really worried about it. Everybody knew it was the last one. I'm not worried about it in all that sense. And they're right. The report came out in Forbes that, although this movie, I believe, made more at the box office than the recent Fantastic Four, it also costs a lot more than Fantastic Four. And after you do the math, this movie, X-Men Dark Phoenix, actually lost the studio more money than the acknowledged across the board flop of Fantastic Four. It actually lost more money than Fantastic Four did. By that definition, it's a bigger flop. Does it raise concerns for the X-Men franchise moving forward? Not at all. Everybody knew this one was coming to an end. We're going to get a fresh restart in a few years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever. Not worried about that per se. But I'll tell you what, Rob. It does, for me, raise a bit of a red flag for the comic book movie genre in general. Because it's not just X-Men Dark Phoenix. Let's look at, remember, earlier this year, or it might have been late last year, Forbes infamously put out this things like, no comic book movie isn't going to be a hit. Remember that? And of course, then Josh Trank put out this great tweet that said, hold my beer, talking about his own Fantastic Four film. But still, we're off this age that comic book movies are the dominant force of the box office right now. Nothing can stop them. And, got these big major trades saying they're never going to fail, blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? It's 2019 now. Let's look at this. There have been 3 major comic book films this year that, while they haven't all lost money, they haven't exactly blew up the box office. You're looking at 2 of them. Let's look at Hellboy. Major comic book film, big bombastic trend. Now, granted, it wasn't a good film, so that kept some people away. Look at this number, guys. $21.9 million worldwide. That's not opening weekend. That's not just domestic. $21.9 million worldwide. X-Men Dark Phoenix was a major money loser. Made $245 million worldwide. We've got comic book movies that open up bigger on opening weekend domestically alone than what this film made worldwide. Shazam, which made money, it was profitable, but $364 million worldwide. The lowest grossing DC film yet. Profitable, great movie, but it comes in at $364 million, coming off of another DC film that made $1 billion. Now, this is all in the same calendar year. We've now had 3 films this year that at the very least underperformed. Now, of course, you can say Spider-Man just came out of the gates huge, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. Obviously, we've had X-Men, we've had Avengers Endgame, made huge amounts of money. But Rob, I'm telling you this, I'm not going to sit here and say, this marks the end of the comic book genre era. I'm not saying that. But I also believe that these studio heads have to at least be a little bit concerned right now, though, especially those that make these comic book movies, a little bit concerned going, well, wait a minute. This isn't indestructible armor. This genre isn't infallible. These aren't guaranteed moneymakers. We've had 3 in half of a year. In half of 1 year, Rob, where a couple have lost the studios major amounts of money. One of them made money, but was the lowest of its entire franchise at this point. Yeah, we had Endgame. Yes, we got Spider-Man, but this is 3 in a year. Rob, I don't know what to exactly put our finger on here, but I guarantee you Kevin Feige and Walter Hamada are smart enough guys that they're going, okay, let's take an evaluation here. Even though none of these films are Marvel films, I guarantee you Kevin Feige's going, okay, let's evaluate here. Let's see what's going on. Because I think this could be, at the very minimum, concerning. I'm not saying it's doom. I'm not saying this is leading to the end. But I'm going to use the word concerning, and I think they should be. Rob, you see these numbers and these facts coming out now. X-Men just lost all this money. Do you think there's anything that overall the industry should be worried about? Or do you think that, probably like a lot of other people do, that this is just a blip on the radar?
No, look, it all comes down, I just said it earlier, it all comes down to great characters and a great story. Just because something is derived from a comic book and it's about superheroes, that means nothing to me. I don't think that means anything to audiences either. What they want is to see great characters and great stories realized on the big screen, whether it's from a novel, whether it's a TV series adaptation put on the big screen, or whether it's a superhero movie. And the problem was, we've been given great X-Men movies before. So we got Days of Future Past. We had X-Men 2. We had Deadpool. We had Wolverine and Logan. We had movies that people loved of these beloved characters. So you need to at least make it to that level. And X-Men Dark Phoenix is adapting one of the classic X-Men storylines that anybody who likes the X-Men either saw it on the 90s animated series, who saw X-Men The Last Stand, it was adapted badly, or has read the comics, and then we get another mediocre adaptation. When we have movies like Infinity War and Endgame in the theater, when you're going to get Dark Phoenix, that's the equivalent of the Infinity War for the X-Men universe. And if you're not given that, it's going to disappoint everyone. So they had failed before they had even shot a frame, because the script that they greenlit was not the story that everybody was expecting to see. That was the mistake that they made. And with Hellboy, we read about the director and the producer fighting on set. No one knew who to listen to. You can't make movies that way. I think those were examples of not comic book films failing, but they were examples of movies failing. And that's what I think is the real takeaway from all this. Shazam, I think, was a movie that didn't connect because it was a little bit schizophrenic. At least it was for me. And it didn't go down one path. It kind of wanted to have it both ways. I liked a lot of Shazam. I didn't love Shazam. But I think Shazam was good enough that a lot of people loved it, like you loved it. But I think what this shows is that at the end of the day, movies have to be good no matter where they come from. Nobody is going to go see a movie just because it has superheroes.
I don't know. I think we have seen examples in the past of some comic book movies that maybe weren't deserving of big money, and they got it because they just have superheroes. I mean, even just beyond that, let's stay in the sci-fi fantasy genre. There are a buttload. I can back up a pickup truck of Transformers movies that are absolute garbage that joined Billion Dollar Club. That joined the Billion Dollar Club, and they were awful. And I just think when you're looking at a major comic book franchise, like, I think there's a couple things to keep in mind. Number one, I don't think nearly as many people have any concept of what the Dark Phoenix saga in the comic book is amongst the average movie-going audience. So I don't think a lot of people really cared about that one way or the other. The trailers maybe didn't sell them on it, but that's another thing altogether. Hellboy making only $21 million. We've heard of other movies with bigger behind-the-scenes disasters going on like that, and they open to more than $21 million, let alone a full $21 million thing. And while I understand not everybody loves Shazam, 91% critic rating. The audience rating for it is through the roof. People loved and adored this film, and yet it made like a third, or less than a third, maybe a quarter. Yeah, closer to a third of what Aquaman made. And it strikes me when you get a collection like that, Rob, in a 6-month period, in just 6 months, less than 6 months, really. I'll tell you this, I'm going to go more into this at Comic-Con when we do our Masters of the Web panel, but to me, a part of this has something to do with Endgame. That Endgame has kind of, both leading up to it and now coming out of it, Endgame has kind of been like seen as the ultimate peak of what you can do with comic book movies. It's the thing they built up to for 10 years and 22 films and blah, blah, blah. And I cannot help but wonder if there might even be a little bit of law of diminishing returns happening here with the audience now. I mean, hell, look, Endgame opened with $357 million. Spider-Man Far From Home has opened to less than half of that. And obviously, Spider-Man is not Endgame. They're different. I get that, but it's worth putting out there. I cannot help but wonder if there's going to be a little bit of an Endgame hangover, both leading up to Endgame, which we saw previous to other films, and coming out of Endgame. I just got to wonder if the entire comic book movie industry at this point needs to start evaluating how it can't, because I feel like, Rob, it can't just be business as normal. I feel like you can't hit that crescendo with an end game and then just think, well, let's just keep doing the way we've been doing things, because I think now the expectations of the audience have maybe changed. Maybe we're starting to see, I've never wanted to say this, comic book fatigue? I've always yelled at people that have said that over the past 10 years, but I don't know, man, 3 films in 6 months. And in one of them, the audiences and the critics loved. And one of them doesn't even make $22 million in the box office. I don't know. I think at least it's concerning. I'm not hitting the panic button. I'm not saying the sky is falling. I'm not saying any of that. Don't misquote me. I'm just saying I think there's at least a little bit of a concern for a Walter Hamada or a Kevin Feige to raise their eyebrow and go, like, maybe we need to look at this. I don't know. But you don't really think there's anything here. You think this is just, it's just coincidence. We've had these 3 films. Each one of them had their individual issues, and we shouldn't worry about it too much. Look how successful Spider-Man is, and let's see where we go. Is that kind of...
Yeah, I mean, look, every genre, whether it's a romantic comedy, whether it's a rom-com, whether it's a body R-rated adult comedy, whether it's a science fiction movie, whether it's a cop thriller, whatever genre you're working in, the film has to have great characters and a great story. And what I think these comic book movies did, especially Hellboy, they let down the Hellboy audience. There was people primed to go see these movies, but they don't go just because we have so much great genre entertainment. I mean, look at a movie like The Last Airbender. That has a huge, enormous audience out there. One of the great animated, most celebrated animated series. It had a fan base. Did they run out and see that film?
We did, and then we walked out of it.
That's right. And it didn't make money.
It's terrible.
It let people down. And you've got to build that. People aren't, what people have to understand is the genre fandom, science fiction, fantasy, horror, animation, we are the most discerning of fans. We don't just watch crap. Now, someone will always bring up the Transformers movies. The Transformers cartoons were never great examples of, they were toy. They were commercials. And those movies, as much as I defend one, and I liked The Battle of Chicago and Dark Side of the Moon, 3, 4, and 5, or 2 and 4 and 5 were pretty awful. However, even I like giant robot fighting porn, and that's the best giant robot fighting porn money can buy. Even I couldn't get through the 5th movie. But I would say that's a franchise that ultimately, if you want to watch robots in disguise fighting, you're going to get something out of it. Something out of it, as god-awful as they might be. But that's the one franchise I would say that about.
I go back to what you said before, because I agree with what you said before. Robot porn's great. If you don't have a great movie with great story, it's irrelevant. And to me, great action without great story is just visual noise.
Well, that's what the 5th Transformers movie proved, that the audience has tolerance.
Yeah, we have a certain level.
Genre fans are the most discerning of all. And when people start realizing this, we'll get better movies. They make the same mistakes over and over and over again. Oh, the fans will turn up anyway.
The problem,
yeah, we will, but then we will walk out.
The problem is, like, your assertion about that, because it wasn't good. People didn't even give it a chance to find out if it was good. It's one thing if Hellboy made $75 million opening weekend and then it dropped down to $5 million on its second weekend. Nobody went to even see it. Hellboy made $12 million on its opening weekend. So it's not like it's a situation where the audience went out, realized it was a bad film, and then they all gave up on it, and then it dried out. They didn't even go to check it out. And that's concern. That's the part that worries me. See, I'm with you if it's like, again, if we saw like a 75% drop from week 1 to week 2, but it had a fair... But this is a situation here where nobody even went to go see it to find out if it was good or bad. And that's the thing that to me is a little bit... to me, again, it's just a little bit eyebrow raising. So again, it might be much ado about nothing. That's why I'm not panicking about it. I just think it's a little bit concerning. But again, Spider-Man's out right now, which we're going to talk about here in a second. That's there too. But Chris, let me ask you this. Do you think you're hearing all this? You're hearing everything I'm saying. You're hearing everything Rob's saying. You're seeing these 3 films come out in the first half of a year. Do you think there's something here for the industry to be at least a little bit concerned about?
I do think there is a quality over quantity issue that we have to focus on. I don't think it's necessarily fatigue. It's just we have stepped up our game. We do expect more of these films. So you can't just bank on it being part of some comic franchise. You have to make a good movie too. I have been waiting my whole life for these movies. I carried all of my X-Men cards in a binder around with me. You know, I have always wanted to see these things on the big screen and done well. So the fact that other people now expect them to be well done too, not just us comic book geeks who are like, well, actually in the Dark Phoenix saga, it happened like this. Like, we all want a good film now because we know they can be good. And, you know, on my way in here today, I was listening to David Tennant does a podcast with, and his guest was Jennifer Garner. And she was talking about, you know, comic book movies with him. And she said this great line of, oh, yeah, I did comic book movies before they took the time to make them good. And it just really stuck with me. But
Let me reiterate how much I love Jennifer Garner. Can I just throw that out there?
I was thinking about, I was like, oh, both of our crushes are talking to each other right now. How sweet. But I really loved that line, though, because when we're talking about this, it reminds me, you know, the genre, while it wasn't at its peak then, those kind of stinkers from the early oddies didn't ruin or derail the genre. It just made them go, maybe we should put some more time and thought into this. And that should always be what you're doing when you're making a movie.
And again, my one concern about that is Shazam was good.
Shazam was
And
so
the
good.
critics loved it.
Shazam
and it's
kids.
Still not as good as it could have. At least made the money. At least it was profitable. But anyway, guys, the big question here is, you've heard a lot of different points of view on here. The question is, the important thing here is, what is your point of view on this? Do you think that, hey, listen, Campea, this is a blip on the radar. Not to worry, coincidence that they all happened here. This is nothing. Or do you think more like me in the sense that, no, I think it's a little bit more than a blip. I think there might be something we should keep our eye on. Or do you think more extremes like, nope, this is the sign. This is it. Comic book movie fatigue is here. The genre is about to go in decline, blah, blah, blah. Let me know what you guys think. Jump down in the comment section below and leave your thoughts there.